I spent 12 years running into burning buildings to save families. I never thought I'd need to save my own son from the man hosting our backyard barbecue. My name is Daniel Carter, and for 12 years, I wore the badge of Station 47, firefighter, paramedic, the guy who runs toward the smoke when everyone else runs away. I've pulled kids from car wrecks, carried elderly couples down ladders, performed CPR on strangers in parking lots. I've been called a hero more times than I can count. But standing in my backyard on that Labor Day weekend, watching my 2-year-old son toddle across the grass toward our neighbor Gregory, I realized something. You can save 100 lives and still be completely blind to the fire burning in your own home. The sun was bright that afternoon. Too bright, the kind of September heat that makes you squint even with sunglasses on. Our neighborhood does this thing every Labor Day, a massive potluck barbecue in someone's backyard. This year, it was our turn. Michelle had been planning it for weeks. She'd made her famous potato salad, hung red, white, and blue streamers from the deck, set up folding tables in neat rows across our lawn. I'd just gotten off a 72-hour shift, 3 days at the station, 2 structure fires, 1 medical call that didn't make it, and about 4 hours of sleep total. I was exhausted, but I came home, showered, put on a clean shirt, and walked out to our backyard where 60, maybe 70 neighbors were already gathering. Everyone wanted to shake my hand. Mr. Patterson from 3 doors down clapped me on the shoulder. "Danny, heard about that warehouse fire on 5th Street. You guys are incredible." Mrs. Alvarez brought me a plate of ribs without me even asking. "You work too hard, mijo. Eat." I smiled, thanked them, played the part. And that's when I saw Jacob. My son, my beautiful dark-haired 2-year-old son, was sitting on the grass near the deck. He had his sippy cup in one hand and a plastic truck in the other. Gregory was crouched next to him, pointing at something in the garden. Jacob laughed, that high-pitched toddler giggle that sounds like pure joy. Then Gregory stood up, brushed the grass off his knees, and Jacob reached up toward him. "Papa," my son said, clear as day. "Papa, up?" I stopped walking. The plate in my hand suddenly felt heavy. Gregory smiled, reached down, and picked Jacob up. Effortless, natural, like he'd done it 100 times before. "Hey, buddy," Gregory said, settling Jacob on his hip. "You want to see the grill?" Jacob nodded, wrapped his small arms around Gregory's neck, and rested his head on his shoulder. My wife Michelle appeared from the kitchen, carrying a tray of hamburger buns. She saw them, Gregory holding our son, and she didn't flinch. Didn't correct Jacob, didn't rush over to take him. She just smiled. "Greg, can you check the propane tank?" she called out. "I think we're running low." "Sure thing," Gregory replied, bouncing Jacob on his hip as he walked toward the grill. I stood there in the middle of my own backyard, surrounded by neighbors and the smell of charcoal and laughter, and felt something cold settle in my chest. If you've ever heard something that made your blood run cold, that moment where the world tilts and you realize nothing is what you thought, you know that silence. It's not actually silent. There's noise everywhere. People talking, music playing, kids shouting, but inside your head, everything goes quiet. You hear your own heartbeat. You feel your hands go numb. I forced myself to move, walked over to the drink cooler, grabbed a beer I didn't want, cracked it open. My hands were steady. Years of training will do that. Teach you to stay calm when your body wants to panic. Gregory's wife, Karen, was standing near the fence, holding a glass of lemonade. She was watching her husband hold my son, and when she turned and saw me looking, her expression changed. She didn't smile, didn't wave. She looked sorry for me. I took a long drink of beer and made myself look away. The party went on. Burgers sizzled. Someone turned up the music. A group of kids started a water balloon fight near the side yard. Normal. Everything was so painfully normal. Except my son had just called another man Papa. I needed air, space. I set down my beer and walked toward the garage, slipping through the side door where no one would notice. The garage was dim, cooler than outside. It smelled like motor oil and old cardboard boxes. My workbench sat against the far wall, tools hanging in neat rows above it. I leaned against the bench and closed my eyes. He's confused, I told myself. He's two. He doesn't know what he's saying. Kids mix up words all the time. But he hadn't hesitated, hadn't stumbled over the word. He'd said it like he'd said it before. Papa. How long had Jacob been calling Gregory that, and why hadn't anyone told me? I opened my eyes and stared at the pegboard above my workbench. Hammers, screwdrivers, wrenches, all in their proper places. Everything organized, everything under control. My gaze drifted to the red metal toolbox in the corner, the one I kept locked. I walked over, pulled the key from my pocket, and opened it. Inside, beneath a layer of old shop rags, was a white envelope. Medical, official. The return address read, Gen Lab Paternity Services. I'd ordered the test 2 months ago, sent it in 6 weeks ago, got the results 3 weeks ago. I hadn't told anyone, not Michelle, not my brother, not a single soul. I pulled out the envelope. The corners were bent from being hidden. There was a small oil smudge on the back where I'd touched it with dirty hands the first time I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of heavy cardstock, barcodes, official stamps, clinical language. I didn't need to read it again. I'd memorized every word, but I read it anyway. Paternity test results. Child Jacob Daniel Carter alleged. Father Daniel Marcus Carter. Probability of paternity 0.0%, 0.0%, not 1%, not 5%, not unlikely. 0. I read it 3 times the day it arrived. Then I put it back in the envelope, hid it in my toolbox, and walked back into my house like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I folded the paper, slid it back into the envelope, and buried it under the rags again. Then I locked the toolbox and stood there in the dim garage, listening to the muffled sounds of laughter and music from the backyard. My son wasn't mine. Biologically, scientifically, legally, he wasn't mine. I'd suspected for months. Little things. The way Jacob's hair curled at the temples. Not like mine, not like Michelle's. The way his eyes were dark brown instead of the blue-green Michelle and I both had. The way he laughed, high and sharp, nothing like my low chuckle. But suspicion isn't the same as proof, and now I had proof. I took a slow breath, straightened my shoulders, and walked back toward the door. I had a party to host, neighbors to smile at, a wife to stand next to and pretend everything was fine. I was good at that. Firefighters are trained to stay calm in chaos, to compartmentalize, to function when everything around you is burning. I could do this. I stepped back outside into the blinding sunlight. Michelle was at the food table, arranging condiments. She saw me and waved. There you are. Can you help Greg with the grill? The burgers are almost done. I nodded, walked over to where Gregory stood, flipping patties with a long spatula. Jacob was sitting in a lawn chair nearby, eating a hot dog with both hands. Hey, Danny, Gregory said, grinning. Just in time, these are perfect. I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in months. Dark curly hair, strong jawline, brown eyes, just like Jacob's. Yeah, I said quietly. Perfect. Gregory didn't notice the edge in my voice. He just handed me the spatula. Can you finish these? I need to grab more buns from inside. Sure. He walked past me, clapping me on the shoulder as he went, friendly, casual. I stood at the grill, flipping burgers, watching the flames lick the edges of the meat. And that's when I saw it. Hanging on the hook inside the garage door, right where I'd just been standing, was a jacket. A men's jacket, dark blue. Expensive looking. I didn't own a jacket like that. I glanced around. No one was watching. I walked back into the garage, pulled the jacket off the hook, and checked the inside label. Size, large, Brooks Brothers. I wore medium. And I didn't shop at Brooks Brothers. I checked the pockets. In the left pocket, a folded receipt. Hotel stationery, Marriott downtown. The date on the receipt was from 3 years ago. September 14th. I stared at it. 3 years ago, Michelle had gone on a girls' weekend with her college friends. Said they were going to a spa 2 hours away. She'd been gone for 3 days. September 14th was right in the middle of that weekend. I turned the receipt over. On the back, in handwriting I didn't recognize, room 512. I put the receipt back in the pocket, hung the jacket back on the hook, and walked outside. Gregory was back at the grill, laughing with Mr. Patterson about something. Michelle was refilling the lemonade pitcher. Jacob was chasing a beach ball across the lawn. Everything looked normal, but I knew the truth now. The affair wasn't new. It wasn't a mistake. It had been going on for at least 3 years, maybe longer. I didn't confront anyone, didn't make a scene. I just smiled, served burgers, made small talk, and played the role of the grateful husband and father. Because I wasn't ready yet, I needed more than a DNA test and a hotel receipt. I needed everything. The party lasted until sunset. People started packing up around 7. Gregory and Karen were among the last to leave. Gregory shook my hand at the door. "Great party, Danny. Thanks for hosting." "Anytime," I said. Karen didn't say anything. She just looked at me with those sad, knowing eyes, and then followed her husband down the driveway. Michelle and I cleaned up in silence. She was humming, happy. "That went really well," she said, loading plates into the dishwasher. "Everyone had such a good time." "Yeah," I said. "It was perfect." She kissed me on the cheek. "I'm going to put Jacob to bed. You coming up?" "In a bit. I need to finish the grill." "Okay, don't stay up too late." She disappeared upstairs. I heard her reading Jacob a bedtime story, his little voice asking questions, her voice patient and sweet, answering him. I stood at the kitchen sink, hands braced on the counter, staring out the window at the dark backyard. Tomorrow I'd call my brother Ethan. He was a divorce lawyer. He'd know what to do. But tonight I just stood there in the quiet house and let the weight of it all settle on my shoulders. My son called another man Papa. My wife had been lying to me for years, and I, the man who saved everyone else, had no idea how to save myself. I didn't know that in 6 hours I'd wish I'd stayed at the station. I called Ethan the next morning. My brother had always been the practical one. While I ran into fires, he built cases. While I trusted my gut, he trusted evidence. We were different that way. But right now, I needed his kind of thinking. His office was downtown, 20th floor of a glass building that looked like it belonged in a different city. I took the elevator up, still wearing my civilian clothes, jeans, and a Station 47 hoodie. The receptionist recognized me from family dinners. "Danny, go right in. He's expecting you." Ethan's office was all dark wood and leather. Law books lined the walls. His desk was clean, except for a yellow legal pad and a silver pen. Behind him, his wedding photo sat in a simple frame. Him and his wife Sarah on their 10th anniversary, stable, happy, everything mine wasn't. He stood when I came in, concern already written on his face. "You sounded bad on the phone," he said. "What's going on?" I closed the door behind me, sat down in the chair across from his desk, and then I told him everything, the Papa incident, the DNA test, the hotel receipt, the timeline that didn't add up. Ethan didn't interrupt. He just listened, taking notes on his legal pad in that precise handwriting of his. When I finished, he set down his pen and leaned back in his chair. "Jesus, Danny." "Yeah." "You're sure about the DNA test? The lab is legitimate?" I pulled the envelope from my jacket pocket and slid it across the desk. Ethan opened it, read the results, examined the letterhead. "Gen Lab," he said slowly. "They're reputable, court admissible. This is solid." That's what I thought. He set the paper down and looked at me, or really looked at me. "How are you holding up?" "I'm functioning." "That's not what I asked." I didn't answer right away. How was I holding up? I'd spent the last 3 weeks moving through my life like I was underwater, going to work, coming home, kissing my wife goodnight, reading bedtime stories to a child who wasn't mine, all while carrying this knowledge in my chest like a stone. "I'm here," I said finally. "That's the best I can do right now." Ethan nodded. He understood. "Okay, here's what we need to do. First, we document everything, every interaction, every piece of evidence, every witness. Second, we establish a timeline. When did the affair start? How long has it been going on? Who else knows? Third, we prepare for custody." "Custody?" I looked up sharply. "Jacob's not biologically mine. How do I—" "You're on the birth certificate. You've been acting as his father for 2 years. In Washington state, that establishes paternal presumption. We can fight for custody based on the child's best interest, especially if we can prove Michelle's infidelity created an unstable environment." Something in my chest loosened, just slightly. "So I don't lose him?" "Not if I can help it." Ethan pulled out a fresh legal pad. "But Danny, I need you to be smart about this. No confrontations, no emotional outbursts. We gather evidence first. Overwhelming, irrefutable evidence, then we make our move. I'm not going to blow up at her. I know you're not. You're one of the most controlled people I know. But this is your wife, your son. It's different when it's personal." He looked at me seriously. "You need to think of this like a rescue operation. You assess the situation, you plan your approach, and you execute with precision. Got it?" I nodded. "Got it." "Good. Now let's talk evidence." We spent the next hour building a strategy. Ethan made a list. Bank statements, phone records, medical documents, witness statements, anything that could establish the affair's timeline and Michelle's deception. "The hotel receipt is good," Ethan said, "but we need more. Do you have access to her phone?" "She has 2 phones," I said. "I saw her using a second one a few weeks ago. She thought I was at work." Ethan's eyebrows went up. "A burner phone?" "I don't know. Maybe. She keeps it in her car." "Find it. Photograph everything. Texts, call logs, photos, but don't delete anything and don't let her know you found it." I nodded, adding it to my mental list. "What about medical records?" Ethan asked. "Pediatrician visits, emergency contacts, that kind of thing?" "I can request those. I'm still Jacob's legal father." "Do it. Today, if possible." He tapped his pen against the pad. "I'm also going to need your deployment orders. We need to establish that timeline, prove you were overseas when Jacob was conceived." I'd already thought of that. "I have copies at home, August 15th through May 3rd, 9 months in Kandahar." Ethan did the math in his head. "And Jacob was born when?" "July 28th. Michelle said she got pregnant in late October, early November." I paused. "I came home on leave for 2 weeks in September. That's when she told me we were trying. Then I left again in October." "But you didn't come back until May." "Right." "So if Jacob was conceived in November like she claims, you were 8,000 miles away." The words hung in the air between us. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I was 8,000 miles away." Ethan wrote something down, then looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time that day. Not as his brother, as his client. "Danny, I have to ask, are you sure you want to go through with this? Because once we start gathering evidence, once we file papers, there's no going back. Your marriage is over. Your life changes completely." "My marriage is already over," I said. "I just didn't know it yet." He nodded slowly. "Okay, then we do this right. We build an airtight case, and we make sure you don't lose your son." I stood up, shook his hand. "Thank you, Ethan." "Don't thank me yet. This is going to get hard before it gets better." "I know." But I didn't know, not really. I left Ethan's office and drove straight to Jacob's pediatrician. Dr. Morrison had been seeing Jacob since he was born. Nice woman, kind. She always made time to explain things when I brought Jacob in for checkups. The receptionist recognized me. "Mr. Carter, what can we do for you?" I need to request copies of Jacob's medical records, all of them. Of course, let me get the release form. It took 15 minutes of paperwork. Then she handed me a thick manila folder. Everything's in there, she said. Vaccinations, well visits, emergency contacts, everything. I thanked her and walked out to my truck. Sat in the driver's seat with the folder in my lap. I opened it. The first few pages were normal. Birth records, weight measurements, vaccine schedules. Then I got to the emergency contact forms. The first one from 2 years ago when we'd first registered with the practice listed me as the primary emergency contact, my cell phone number, my work number at the station. But the second form, dated 8 months ago, had been updated. My name was still there. But someone had crossed it out in black pen, not whiteout, not correction tape, just a thick black line through Daniel Carter and my phone number. And underneath, in handwriting I recognized as Michelle's, was a new name and number. Emergency contact Gregory Hayes. Relationship to patient, family friend, phone in 206-5555-0147. I stared at it for a long time. She'd erased me, deliberately, officially, and she'd replaced me with him. I took out my phone and photographed every page of the folder. Then I drove home. Michelle's car was in the driveway when I got there. She'd taken Jacob to a playdate that morning, but they must have gotten back early. I could hear them in the backyard, Jacob's laughter, Michelle's voice. I parked the truck and went inside through the front door. Her purse was on the kitchen counter, her keys in the dish by the door, but her car keys weren't there. I walked back outside casually, like I was just checking the mail, opened the driver's side door of her sedan. The second phone was in the glove compartment, tucked under the car manual. iPhone 12, rose gold case, no lock screen. I picked it up. The screen was warm. She'd used it recently. I opened the messages. There was only one contact saved. I scrolled through the texts, hundreds of them, going back 2 years. Michelle, can you come over after Jacob's bedtime? Danny's working a 24-hour shift. On my way. Miss you. Michelle, he actually thanked me for being a good mom today. Does he suspect anything? Michelle, no way. He's too busy being a hero. My hands started shaking. I kept scrolling. When are you going to tell him? Michelle, tell him what? That Jacob isn't his. Never. Why would I? Doesn't he deserve to know? Michelle, he's happy. We're happy. What he doesn't know won't hurt him. I felt something crack inside my chest. There were photos too, Michelle and Gregory together, at restaurants I'd never been to, in hotel rooms. One photo showed them lying in bed, her head on his chest, both of them smiling at the camera. The date stamp on that photo was from 6 months ago. I photographed everything, every text, every photo, every call log. Then I put the phone back exactly where I found it, closed the glove compartment, and walked back inside. Michelle was in the kitchen now making lunch. Jacob was at the table, coloring with crayons. Hey, she said brightly. You're home early. Want a sandwich? No thanks, I said. I ate downtown. How's Ethan? Good. Busy. That's nice. She smiled at me, open, trusting, like nothing in the world was wrong. I looked at Jacob. He was drawing a picture, stick figures in crayon, a tall one, a shorter one, and a tiny one with brown hair. Who's that, buddy? I asked, crouching next to him. That's Papa, he said, pointing to the tall figure. That's Mama, and that's me. Michelle froze. The knife in her hand stopped moving. Jacob, she said quickly, laughing, too high, too forced. That's Daddy, not Papa. Remember? Daddy. Jacob looked confused. But Papa said, Honey, go wash your hands for lunch, Michelle interrupted. Go on? Jacob slid off his chair and ran to the bathroom. Michelle turned to me, still smiling, but her eyes were different now, worried. He's just confused, she said. You know how kids are. They mix things up. I stood up slowly. Yeah, I know. If you've ever had to stand in your own kitchen and lie to someone's face while they're lying to yours, You know what that moment feels like. You smile, you nod, you pretend everything is fine, because you're not ready yet. Not yet. I spent the next week gathering evidence, bank statements showing hotel charges I didn't make, credit card bills with restaurant purchases I didn't remember, receipts Michelle had forgotten to throw away. I also talked to neighbors, carefully, casually. Mrs. Alvarez mentioned she'd seen Gregory's car in our driveway all the time when you're at work, mijo. She thought he was helping Michelle with yard work. Mr. Patterson said he'd seen them at the grocery store together once. With little Jacob, they looked like a family. Every piece of information felt like another nail. And then Karen called me. I didn't recognize the number at first. I was at the station halfway through a shift when my phone buzzed. Hello? Daniel? A woman's voice, quiet, nervous. It's Karen Hayes. I stepped outside into the apparatus bay where it was quieter. Karen, hi. I need to talk to you. Can we meet somewhere? Somewhere private? When? Today, if possible. I know you're working, but Her voice broke. I have something you need to hear. We met at a park 3 miles from our neighborhood, neutral ground. Karen was sitting on a bench when I arrived, wearing sunglasses even though the sky was overcast. Her hands were clasped in her lap, twisting a tissue. I sat down next to her, didn't say anything, just waited. I should have told you a long time ago, she said finally. A year ago, maybe longer, but I was scared, and I was ashamed, and She took a shaky breath. I'm so sorry, Daniel. What do you need to tell me? She reached into her purse and pulled out a small USB drive. Black, SanDisk. There was a label on it in her handwriting. The truth. I'm sorry. Everything's on here, she said, handing it to me. Audio recordings, photos, messages, everything I could find. I took the drive. It was warm from being in her pocket. The plastic casing had a small crack, like she'd been squeezing it too hard. Karen, what is this? She finally looked at me, took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red. My husband has been having affairs for 5 years, she said. Multiple affairs, with multiple women. Your wife isn't his first. She won't be his last. She paused. Daniel, Gregory has 3 other children, secret children, with 3 different women in our neighborhood and the surrounding areas. The world tilted. 3? 3 that I know of, all under 5 years old, all from affairs he conducted while we were married, while we were raising our own 2 kids. Her voice hardened. I've been documenting it for 2 years. I have proof, paternity tests, photos, messages. I was going to use it in the divorce. But then I saw you at the barbecue. I saw your face when Jacob called him Papa. And I realized you didn't know. I couldn't speak. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I should have told you sooner, but I was trying to protect my kids. I was trying to keep my family together, and She started crying. I was a coward. I looked down at the USB drive in my hand. Why are you telling me now? Because you deserve the truth. And because those other women, they deserve to know too. Gregory has been building this empire of lies. And all of us, we've been paying the price. She wiped her eyes. I'm filing for divorce next week. I'm taking my kids and I'm leaving. But before I go, I wanted you to have this. Use it however you need to. I closed my hand around the drive. Thank you, Karen. Don't thank me. I should have done this a long time ago. She stood up, smoothing her skirt. There's a recording on there, an audio confession. I recorded it myself. You'll know it when you hear it. Karen, good luck, Daniel. You're a good man. You deserve better than this. She walked away, leaving me alone on the bench with a USB drive that held enough evidence to burn down 2 families, maybe more. I sat there for a long time just holding it. The plastic was cracked. The label was written in shaky blue ink, like she'd been crying when she wrote it. Then I got in my truck, plugged the drive into my laptop, and started going through the files. There were photos, Gregory with 3 different women, each one holding a child, each child under 5 years old, each one with Gregory's dark curly hair and brown eyes. There were messages, screenshots of texts where Gregory promised each woman that she was the only one, that he was going to leave Karen, that they'd be a family. And then there was the audio file. I clicked on it. Karen's voice filled my truck. My name is Karen Elizabeth Hayes. Today's date is August 30th, 2024. I'm recording this as evidence for my divorce proceedings and as testimony for anyone else who's been affected by my husband's actions. She took a breath. I could hear her steadying herself. Gregory Michael Hayes, my husband of 15 years, has conducted at least 4 extramarital affairs that I'm aware of. These affairs have resulted in at least 4 children born outside of our marriage. The children are Lily Hayes, born March 2021, mother Angela Torres; Noah Hayes, born June 2021, mother Rachel Webb; and Maya Hayes, born October 2022, mother Jessica Chen. My stomach dropped. The 4th child is Jacob Daniel Carter, born July 2022, mother Michelle Carter; legal father listed on birth certificate, Daniel Carter; biological father, Gregory Hayes. She paused. When she spoke again, her voice was shaking. I have known about most of these affairs for over 2 years. I did not come forward because I was afraid of losing my children, my home, my financial security. I was complicit in my silence, and I am deeply, profoundly sorry to everyone who's been hurt by my husband's actions and my failure to act. There was a long pause. To Daniel Carter specifically, I saw you at the Labor Day barbecue. I saw your son call my husband Papa. I saw your face, and I realized you had no idea, that Michelle never told you, that you've been raising Gregory's son thinking he was yours. I'm so sorry. You deserve the truth. You and Jacob both deserve better. The recording ended. I sat in my truck in an empty parking lot and listened to it 3 times. Then I called Ethan. I have everything, I said when he picked up. Bank records, phone records, photos, witness testimony, and a recorded confession from Gregory's wife. Jesus, when can you bring it in? Tomorrow, but Ethan, it's bigger than I thought. There are 3 other families, 3 other women, 3 other kids. There was a long silence on the other end. Danny, my brother said carefully, this isn't just about your marriage anymore. This is about exposing a pattern. You ready for that? I thought about Jacob calling Gregory Papa, about Michelle's texts mocking my trust, about 3 other women raising Gregory's children alone, about Karen's cracked USB drive and her shaky voice saying I was a coward. Yeah, I said, I'm ready. Good. Because once this comes out, there's no putting it back. I ended the call and sat there in the silence. The next day, I went back to work. 48-hour shift, 2 medical calls, 1 false alarm, and a kitchen fire that we put out in 20 minutes. Between calls, I sat in the common room with my crew. We'd been working together for 6 years. These guys knew me better than most people, better than my wife, apparently. Captain Reynolds noticed I was quiet. He always noticed. You good, Carter? He asked, pouring himself coffee. Yeah, Cap, just tired. You've been tired a lot lately. I didn't answer. He sat down across from me, lowered his voice. You know you can talk to us, right? Whatever it is. I looked around the room. Mike was cleaning equipment. Tommy was reading a magazine. Sanchez was napping on the couch. These were my brothers, my real brothers. Can I ask you something? I said quietly. Always. If you found out someone you trusted, someone you'd built a life with, had been lying to you for years, what would you do? Reynolds set down his coffee. That's not a hypothetical question, is it? No, sir. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I'd burn it all down, carefully, strategically, but I'd burn it down. He looked at me seriously, and I wouldn't do it alone. That's what brothers are for. Something in my chest eased. I might need backup, I said. In about 2 weeks. Nothing dangerous, just moral support. You got it, whatever you need. He stood up, clapped me on the shoulder. We're your family too, Danny. Don't forget that. I nodded, couldn't quite speak. That night, after my shift ended, I drove home in the early morning darkness. The house was quiet when I got there. Michelle was asleep upstairs. Jacob was asleep in his room. I stood in the hallway outside his door, listening to his soft breathing. My son, not biologically, not genetically, but mine. I wasn't going to lose him. I went to my room, where Michelle was sleeping peacefully, and I laid down next to her in the darkness. She stirred, reached for my hand. You're home? She murmured, half asleep. Yeah, I'm home. She squeezed my hand. Love you. She fell back asleep within seconds. I lay there staring at the ceiling, holding the hand of a woman who'd been betraying me for years, and I made myself a promise. In 2 weeks, on Labor Day, we were hosting the neighborhood barbecue again. It was tradition. Everyone would be there. And I was going to tell them everything. Not in anger, not in violence, just the truth, evidence, witnesses, proof. I was going to stand in my own backyard in front of 80 people, and I was going to read that DNA test aloud. And then I was going to play Karen's recording. And then I was going to let the truth do what fire does best. Burn everything to the ground. The next 2 weeks passed like a countdown. I went to work, came home, played with Jacob, had dinner with Michelle, smiled at Gregory when I saw him in the yard. Normal. Everything looked so painfully normal. But I was planning, gathering, preparing. Ethan filed preliminary paperwork. I secured copies of everything, deployment orders, DNA results, medical records, Karen's USB, photos from Michelle's phone. The other women, Angela, Rachel, Jessica, Karen had contacted them too. Given them the evidence. They were furious, devastated, ready to come forward. It was all coming together. The night before Labor Day, Michelle was in the kitchen making her potato salad. I was setting up tables in the backyard. Jacob was playing with blocks in the living room. Michelle came outside, wiping her hands on a towel. This is going to be perfect, she said, surveying the yard. Even better than last year. Yeah, I said. It'll be memorable. She smiled, kissed my cheek. I'm so grateful for our perfect family, Danny. I really am. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I'd loved, the woman I'd trusted, the woman who'd been lying to me for years. Michelle? I said quietly. Yeah? Tomorrow's going to change everything. She laughed. Well, it's a party. Of course it'll be special. That's not what I meant. But she'd already gone back inside, humming to herself. I stood in the backyard as the sun set, surrounded by tables and chairs and streamers, and I thought about what Captain Reynolds had said. You run into fires for us. We're not letting you burn alone. Tomorrow my brothers from the station would be here. Ethan would be here. Karen would be here. The truth would be here. And I was ready. I walked back inside. Jacob was getting ready for bed. Michelle was reading him a story. Good night, buddy, I said, kissing his forehead. Night, Daddy. Daddy, not Papa. I held on to that word like a lifeline. Michelle closed the book and followed me out of Jacob's room. You coming to bed? In a bit. I need to prep a few things for tomorrow. Okay, don't stay up too late. She kissed me. Love you. I didn't say it back. She didn't notice. I went downstairs, sat at the kitchen table, and pulled out the envelope one more time. Probability of paternity, 0.0%. Tomorrow, 80 people would hear those words. Tomorrow, everything would shatter. Tomorrow, I would finally stop burning alone. Labor Day arrived with clear skies and temperatures in the low 80s. Perfect barbecue weather. I woke up at 6 a.m. even though the party wasn't until noon. Michelle was still asleep. Jacob was still asleep. The house was quiet. I got dressed, went downstairs, and started setting up. By 8 a.m., Captain Reynolds arrived with Mike and Tommy from the station. They'd volunteered to help set up, or that's what I'd told Michelle. Really, they were here for backup. "Where do you want us?" Reynolds asked quietly. "Grill first. Then I need you positioned around the yard. Casual. Just there." He understood. "We got you, brother." By 10 a.m., Ethan pulled up with his wife, Sarah. He was carrying a briefcase. "Everything's in here," he said, keeping his voice low. "DNA results, deployment orders, medical records, all organized, court ready." "Good. Danny." He put his hand on my shoulder. "Last chance to back out. Once you do this, there's no undoing it." "I know." "You sure?" I looked at the backyard. The tables set up in neat rows, the red, white, and blue streamers hanging from the deck. Everything perfect. Everything normal. "I'm sure." By 11:30, neighbors started arriving. The Pattersons, the Alvarez family, the Johnsons from 2 streets over, families with kids, elderly couples, everyone carrying dishes and drinks and smiles. Gregory and Karen arrived at 11:45. Gregory was wearing khaki shorts and a polo shirt, grinning like he owned the place. Karen was pale, wearing sunglasses, walking 3 steps behind him. She caught my eye. Nodded once. I nodded back. Michelle was in her element, greeting everyone, directing people to tables, laughing and hugging neighbors like this was the best day of her life. Maybe she thought it was. Jacob was running around with other kids, playing tag near the fence, happy, innocent, unaware that his entire world was about to change. I felt Captain Reynolds move up beside me. "How you holding up?" "I'm good." "You don't look good." "I'm functional. That's close enough." He squeezed my shoulder. "We're right here, the whole time." By noon, there were easily 80 people in our backyard, maybe more. The biggest turnout we'd ever had. Perfect. I walked to the center of the deck where we'd set up a small, portable speaker system for music. I'd told Michelle I wanted to make a toast before we started eating. She'd thought it was sweet. I picked up the microphone, tapped it twice. The feedback whined through the yard. Everyone stopped talking, turned to look at me. Michelle was near the food table, smiling. Gregory was by the grill, beer in hand. Karen was standing near the fence, arms crossed. "Hey everyone," I said. My voice came out steady, calm. "Thanks for coming. Before we get started, I want to make a toast." People raised their drinks, smiled, waited. "I've spent 12 years as a firefighter," I continued, "and in that time I've learned something important. The truth is like fire. You can try to contain it, you can try to control it, but eventually it finds oxygen, and when it does, it burns everything." A few uncertain laughs. Michelle's smile faltered slightly. "Today, I want to toast to the truth." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the folded DNA test results, because I've been living a lie for 2 years, and I think it's time everyone knew. The yard went completely silent. Michelle's face went white. "Danny, what are you—" "On July 28th, 2 years ago, my wife gave birth to our son, Jacob." I unfolded the paper slowly. I was the happiest man alive. I thought I was a father. I thought I had everything. Gregory set down his beer, started moving toward the gate. "Don't," Captain Reynolds said quietly, stepping in front of him. Mike and Tommy moved to flank the exit. Gregory froze. I held up the paper. 3 weeks ago, I received the results of a paternity test. Professional lab, court admissible. Would you like to know what it says? "Danny, please." Michelle was crying now. "Not like this, not here." "Where would you prefer, Michelle? In private? Like you've been keeping your affair private for 3 years? Gasps rippled through the crowd. I looked down at the paper and read aloud, slowly, clearly, so every single person could hear. Paternity test results. Child, Jacob Daniel Carter. Alleged father, Daniel Marcus Carter. Probability of paternity, 0.0%. Silence, complete silence. 0, I repeated. Not 5%, not unlikely. 0. As in, there is no biological possibility that I am Jacob's father. Michelle was sobbing openly now. Mrs. Alvarez had her hand over her mouth. Mr. Patterson looked like he'd been punched. Now, you might be wondering, I continued, my voice eerily calm, how is that possible? I was married. We were trying for a baby. How could I not be the father? I reached into Ethan's briefcase and pulled out my deployment orders, held them up. These are my military deployment orders, August 15th, 2021 through May 3rd, 2022, 9 months in Kandahar, Afghanistan, serving my country. I pointed at Gregory. While I was 8,000 miles away fighting for our freedom, my neighbor Gregory was here, in my house, in my bed, with my wife. That's not... Gregory started. Shut up, I said. The command in my voice stopped him cold. I'm not done. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the speaker. You see, Gregory's wife Karen has been very helpful. She's been documenting his affairs for 2 years, and she gave me something very interesting. I pressed play. Karen's voice filled the entire backyard. My name is Karen Elizabeth Hayes. Today's date is August 30th, 2024. I'm recording this as evidence for my divorce proceedings and as testimony for anyone else who's been affected by my husband's actions. Real Karen, standing by the fence, had tears streaming down her face. Recorded, Karen continued, Gregory Michael Hayes, my husband of 15 years, has conducted at least 4 extramarital affairs that I'm aware of. These affairs have resulted in at least 4 children born outside of our marriage. The crowd erupted in whispers. Gregory tried to move again. Tommy stepped in front of him. The recording continued, listing names. Lily Hayes, Noah Hayes, Maya Hayes. And then the 4th child is Jacob Daniel Carter, born July 2022. Mother, Michelle Carter. Legal father listed on birth certificate, Daniel Carter. Biological father, Gregory Hayes. Michelle collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Several neighbors moved away from her like she was contagious. I stopped the recording. So let me be clear, I said, my voice hard now. While I was deployed, serving my country, my wife conducted an affair with our neighbor. She got pregnant with his child. She lied to me about the paternity. She put my name on the birth certificate, and for 2 years, she let me believe Jacob was mine. I turned to Gregory. And you? You didn't just betray me. You have 3 other children, 3 other women you lied to, 3 other families you destroyed. Is this true? A woman's voice called out. I recognized her, Angela Torres, from 2 neighborhoods over. She was standing near the back, holding a little girl with dark curls. Gregory, is this true? Gregory's face had gone from red to gray. Angela, I can explain. That's Lily, isn't it? I said, pointing to the little girl. Born March 2021. Your daughter. Another woman pushed through the crowd. Rachel Webb. She was holding a little boy. You son of a bitch, she said to Gregory. You told me you were leaving Karen. You said we'd be a family. How many? Someone in the crowd demanded. How many affairs? At least 4 that we know of, Ethan said, stepping forward. He held up his briefcase. I'm Daniel's attorney. I have documented evidence of 4 affairs, 4 children, and years of systematic deception. This isn't speculation. This is fact. The crowd was buzzing now. Angry voices, shocked voices. Someone was calling Gregory a predator. Someone else was demanding Michelle leave. And then Mr. Patterson, Gregory's boss, pushed through the crowd. He walked right up to Gregory, stared at him. You work for my firm, Patterson said. His voice was shaking with rage. You represent our company, our values, our reputation. Sir, I can... You're fired, Patterson said flatly. Effective immediately. I don't care that it's Labor Day weekend, Gregory. I don't care that it's a holiday. You violated every principle our firm stands for. You're done. Don't bother showing up Tuesday. Security will collect your badge and escort you from the building. Gregory's mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. 18 years. Patterson continued. I trusted you for 18 years. I promoted you. I brought you into my home. And this... He gestured at the crowd, at the sobbing women, at the children. This is who you really are. He turned and walked away. Someone started clapping, then another person. Then half the yard was applauding Patterson's decision. Gregory stood there surrounded by 80 people, utterly destroyed. Michelle tried to stand, to come toward me. Danny, please, we need to talk. Privately, I can explain... Explain what? I said. Explain the hotel receipts going back 3 years? Explain the second phone you keep hidden in your car? Explain the texts where you mock me for trusting you? I pulled out my phone and read aloud. Danny's so oblivious. He actually thanked me for being a good mom. I looked up at her. You wrote that with a laughing emoji. She crumpled. You erased me, I continued. From Jacob's medical records, you crossed out my name as his emergency contact and wrote Gregory's. You systematically replaced me in my own son's life. I didn't mean... You meant every word, every action, every lie. I looked at the crowd, at the neighbors who'd known me for years, who'd called me a hero. I spent 12 years saving families, and I never saw that my own was already gone. Mrs. Alvarez was crying, so was Sarah, Ethan's wife. Several people were glaring at Michelle and Gregory with open disgust. Karen finally moved from her position by the fence. She walked up to her husband, looked him in the eye, and said, I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. I'm taking the kids. You'll never see them without supervision again, and I'm going to make sure every single one of these women gets the child support they deserve. She turned to me. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, Daniel. I was wrong, but I'm telling you now. In front of everyone, you're a good man. You deserve better than this. She walked away, head high. Angela Torres approached with Lily. I'm filing for paternity support, she said to Gregory. My lawyer will contact you. Rachel Webb stepped forward with Noah. So am I. A third woman I didn't recognize pushed through. Jessica Chen holding a little girl. Me too. And I'm pressing charges for fraud. 4 women, 4 children, all under 5 years old, all with Gregory's features. Gregory looked around the yard at his destroyed reputation, his furious wife, the women demanding accountability, his former boss who'd fired him on the spot, and he finally spoke. I need to leave. No, I said, you need to face this. Danny, you don't get to call me that. You don't get to use my name like we're friends, like you didn't destroy my life. I stepped closer. You came into my home. You slept with my wife. You fathered my son. And you did it while I was serving my country, while I was deployed, while I was trusting you to be a good neighbor. I never meant... You meant everything, every choice, every lie. Every time you held Jacob, you knew. Every time you came to a barbecue, you knew. Every time you shook my hand, you knew. My voice dropped. You're not just a cheater, Gregory. You're a predator, and everyone here knows it now. The silence that followed was absolute. Then someone called out, Get out of here, Gregory. You're not welcome. Yeah, leave. Another voice agreed. The crowd started murmuring agreement. Gregory looked around desperately, finding no allies. He turned and practically ran for the gate. Karen didn't follow him. Michelle stood alone near the food table, mascara running down her face, trembling. Michelle Carter, Ethan said, stepping forward with formal precision. I'm serving you notice that my client will be filing for divorce on grounds of adultery and fraud. Additionally, we'll be seeking full custody of Jacob Daniel Carter based on the child's best interest and your demonstrated pattern of deception. You can't take Jacob, Michelle whispered. He's my son. He's my son, I said. I've raised him for 2 years. I've been his father in every way that matters. Biology doesn't change that, and I will fight for him with everything I have. The court will side with me, she said desperately. I'm his mother, his biological mother. The court will side with the parent who didn't commit fraud, Ethan said coldly. The parent who didn't conduct a 3-year affair. The parent who provides a stable home environment. That's Daniel. Her face crumpled. I loved you. No, I said. You didn't. You loved the life I gave you. The stability. The respectability. But you didn't love me. If you had, you wouldn't have done this. She tried to reach for me. I stepped back. Don't, I said quietly. We're done, Michelle. You need to leave. This is my house. This is our house, and right now you're not welcome here. Ethan will be in touch about the legal proceedings, but today you need to go. Mrs. Alvarez stepped forward. I'll help you pack a bag, Michelle. Come on. Michelle looked around the yard one more time, at the neighbors who wouldn't meet her eyes, at the women with Gregory's children, at Karen standing tall by the fence, at me standing surrounded by my fire station brothers. And finally, she started walking toward the house. The party obviously was over. People started gathering their things, but before they left, dozens of them came up to me. Mr. Patterson shook my hand. You're a good man, Danny. If you need anything, character witness, legal support, anything, you call me. Mrs. Alvarez hugged me. Mijijo, you did the right thing. The other families with kids nodded their support. Several people said they'd testify if needed. Angela, Rachel, and Jessica stood together, a united front. Thank you, Angela said, for exposing him. We all thought we were alone. You're not alone, I said. None of us are. Karen was the last to approach. I'm sorry it had to be like this. Don't be. This needed to happen. I paused. Thank you for the recording, for the evidence, for being brave. You're the brave one, she said softly. I just finally did the right thing. By 2 p.m., the yard was empty except for my crew from the station. We cleaned up in silence. Took down the streamers, folded the tables, bagged the untouched food. Captain Reynolds found me sitting on the deck steps, staring at the empty yard. You okay? He asked. I don't know. That was the hardest thing I've ever watched someone do. It had to be done. I know, but that doesn't make it easier. He sat down next to me. What happens now? Now? I looked up at the house, at the home I'd built, the life I'd believed in. Now I fight for my son, and I figure out how to rebuild. You won't do it alone. I know. He clapped me on the back and stood up. We'll give you some space, but we're one call away, anytime, day or night. Thank you, Cap. That's what brotherhood means, Danny. Not the blood you're born with, not the vows you take. Just the people who stay when everything burns. After they left, I sat alone in the quiet backyard. Michelle had packed a bag and left 2 hours ago. Gone to her mother's, probably. Jacob was inside, napping, unaware that his entire world had changed. I pulled out my phone and looked at the photos from this morning. The streamers, the tables, the smiles. Everything had looked so perfect. But perfect was just another word for lie. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Already got 3 calls from neighbors offering to testify. Patterson sent his lawyer's direct line. This is going to be easier than I thought. You did good, brother. I didn't feel good. I felt empty, exhausted, hollowed out. But I also felt something else. Free. The next 3 weeks moved fast. Michelle filed a countersuit for custody. Ethan demolished it with evidence in 48 hours. Gregory lost his job, his house, and his reputation. 4 paternity suits were filed. His bank accounts were frozen. Karen's divorce was brutal and public. The neighborhood turned against both of them completely. Michelle's mother called me to apologize. Even her own father refused to speak to her. Meanwhile, Jacob stayed with me. Our routine didn't change. Breakfast, playground, bedtime stories. He asked about Mama a few times. I told him she was away for a while, but she loved him very much. I didn't tell him about Gregory, not yet. He was too young to understand. The custody hearing was scheduled for October 15th. Ethan was confident. They have nothing, Danny. No stability, no credibility. You're a decorated firefighter with a spotless record. You've been the primary caregiver. You have community support, medical records, financial stability. They're going to give you full custody. What about visitation? Supervised only, maybe once a month. The judge isn't going to reward her behavior. And he was right. On October 15th, the judge awarded me full legal and physical custody of Jacob Daniel Carter. Michelle got supervised visitation twice a month. Gregory got nothing. No rights, no visitation, no contact. The judge's words were clear. Biology does not determine parenthood. Care does. Consistency does. Love does. Mr. Carter has proven himself to be this child's father in every meaningful way. This court sees no reason to disrupt that bond. I walked out of the courthouse with my son in my arms and my brother by my side. It was over. Not easy, not clean, but over. If you've ever stood up for yourself, really stood up in front of everyone, knowing there's no going back, you know what this moment feels like. Leave A if you've been there. 6 months later, things had settled into a new kind of normal. Michelle had moved 3 hours away. She saw Jacob twice a month at a supervised facility. He didn't call her much anymore, just Mama when he remembered. Gregory had left the state entirely. Facing 4 child support orders and a ruined reputation, he'd taken a job in Montana. Karen got everything in the divorce: house, savings, kids. The neighborhood threw me a birthday party in March, small, quiet, just the people who mattered. And Jacob, my son, my boy, was thriving. He'd started preschool, made friends, stopped asking about Papa, started calling the firefighters at Station 47 his uncles. One Saturday afternoon, I picked him up from a playdate at Mrs. Alvarez's house. He was carrying a piece of construction paper folded carefully in his small hands. "I made something for you, Daddy," he said in the truck. "Yeah, can I see?" He unfolded it carefully. It was a crayon drawing. In the center was a tall stick figure with a firefighter helmet. That was me. Surrounding me were 8 more stick figures, each labeled with a name: Uncle Mike, Uncle Tommy, Uncle Reynolds, Uncle Sanchez, Uncle Patterson, Uncle Ethan, Mrs. Alvarez, Karen. At the top, in Jacob's wobbly 3-year-old handwriting, "My real family." I pulled over to the side of the road because I couldn't see through the tears. "Do you like it, Daddy?" Jacob asked, worried. "I love it, buddy." I pulled him into a hug. "It's perfect." "Can we put it on the wall?" "Yeah, we can put it on the wall." That evening, I took the drawing to Station 47. The guys were between calls, sitting around the common room. "What's that?" Captain Reynolds asked. I held up the drawing. "Jacob made this, called it My Real Family." They all gathered around to look. Mike grinned. "He drew all of us." "Yeah," I said. "He did." Reynolds pulled out a frame from the supply closet. "Let's make it official." We framed the drawing and hung it on the wall in the common room, right next to the Station 47 photo and the memorial wall for fallen brothers. Jacob's drawing, purple crayon, 8 firefighters surrounding one father, hearts drawn around all of them. Reynolds stood back and looked at it. "That's what it's all about, isn't it? Family isn't who you're born to. It's who shows up when everything's burning." "Yeah," I said quietly. "It is." Tommy raised his coffee mug. "To found family." We all raised our mugs. "To found family." Later that night, after Jacob was asleep and the house was quiet, I sat on the back deck where the Labor Day barbecue had been 6 months ago. The yard was empty now, peaceful. The ghosts of that day had finally faded. I thought about the last year, the betrayal, the evidence, the public revelation, the custody battle, the rebuilding. It had been the hardest year of my life. But I'd survived it, and more than that, I'd won. Not because I destroyed Michelle and Gregory. They destroyed themselves. I'd won because I'd kept my son. because I'd found out who my real family was, because I'd learned that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the family you're born into. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Final divorce papers signed. It's official. You're free. I looked up at the stars. Free. Yeah, I was. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up when everything's burning down. If you've ever found your real family in unexpected places, whether it's friends who became siblings, mentors who became parents, or communities that became home, share your story in the comments. I want to hear about the family you chose. I spent 12 years running into burning buildings to save families. Turns out the family I needed to save was the one I built after everything burned down. I look at Jacob now, almost 4 years old, happy, healthy, surrounded by people who genuinely love him, and I know I made the right choice. Not the easy choice, the right one. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. Some lies can't be undone. Some fires burn too hot to contain. But when the smoke clears and the ashes settle, you find out who you really are. You find out what brotherhood really means. Not the blood you share, not the vows you make, not the titles you carry, just the people who stay when everything else burns away. Jacob's drawing hangs in the firehouse now. A reminder, purple crayon, 8 firefighters, 1 father, 1 real family. And every time I see it, I remember I didn't lose my family that Labor Day. I found it. This is brotherhood.